Infect and Affinity are historically two of the fastest and most explosive strategies in the history of the modern format, both trying to convert extremely efficient card synergies into fast wins. Affinity tries to dump a bunch of individually weak artifact cards into play and leverage them with a powerful payoff like Cranial Plating or Arcbound Ravager to swarm the opponent before they can set up, while Infect relies on only one or two small creatures and tries to deal 10 poison damage to the opponent over 1 to 2 combat steps with pump spells like Might of Old Crozier and Groundswell. However, due to how the styles of each deck line up, Affinity has always scored extremely well against Infect. Generally, the Affinity player is able to establish a large board state and either leave back an Ornithopter or a similar small creature to buy a turn against Infect and then win the combat race, or use interactions such as Galvanic Blast to stop the Infect player from having an attacker at all. So how does Tom Ross, one of the best Infect players of all time, try to justify playing the deck in a meta with lots of Affinity? By doing something completely counterintuitive. Playing Infect as a makeshift control deck. This strategy is only possible due to some cards in Tom's sideboard, namely the 4 Nature's Claims, which can destroy basically every non-land card in the Affinity deck list. Giving the Affinity player 4 life also doesn't slow down Affinity's aggressive plan, as the deck doesn't plan to win through damage anyway. He also has 2 Twisted Image, which can kill a few creatures like Ornithopter or Signal Pest while drawing a card, a Pithing Needle to shut down a lot of Affinity's strongest payoffs, and a Necropede, which is able to trade with one creature and then likely kill another with its Dies trigger. What also helps is the fact that Tom can leverage his generally aggressive pump spells to instead hold back his creatures to block, essentially trading his pump spells for his opponent's creatures in combat. Since Affinity has so many horrible top decks in the late game due to having around 25 mana sources and a bunch of other low value draws like Memnite and Ornithopter, Tom argues that by exchanging resources in the early game he can simplify to a top deck war where he draws better than the Affinity player on average. So, by adding 8 efficient controlling cards and also leveraging the deck's main engine in a way that exchanges resources as well, Tom is able to turn his fast deck into one that's able to bleed Affinity out of cards. And this control plan doesn't exist at the expense of Infect's fast nature either. If the Affinity player doesn't play carefully around opposing attacks, Infect is still threatening to win in just a couple of connecting attacks. This pressure makes it even harder to go all in when attacking, which further slows the Affinity player down and plays into the long game. With this strategy, Tom goes on to win both post-sideboarded games and win this matchup, and proves to us that matchup understanding and creativity both go a very long way when it comes to Magic.